In the summer of 1987, FBI agent Sarah Mitchell received what would become the most disturbing case file of her career. The manila envelope contained a single photograph of a town that, according to official records, had never existed. The image showed a typical American small town with tree-lined streets, white picket fences, and a water tower bearing the name Millbrook Valley. What made this photograph extraordinary was not what it showed, but what it represented: a community of over 3,000 people that had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers and fragmented memories. The case began 3 months earlier, when a highway patrol officer in Nevada reported finding a confused elderly man wandering along Interstate 80. The man, later identified as Harold Kemper, claimed to be the former mayor of Millbrook Valley, a town he insisted was located somewhere in the Nevada desert. When authorities checked state records, no such town existed. No incorporation papers, no census data, no postal records. It was as if Harold Kemper was describing a place that had been systematically erased from every official document in existence. Agent Mitchell's investigation started with Harold Kemper's medical examination at the Nevada State Hospital. Despite showing signs of severe dehydration and malnutrition, Kemper's mental faculties appeared intact. He provided detailed descriptions of his town, including street names, local businesses, and the names of hundreds of residents. He spoke of the annual Harvest Festival, the high school football team called the Millbrook Mustangs, and the old mining operation that had sustained the community for decades. Most disturbing of all, he insisted that something terrible had happened in the final weeks before he found himself alone on the highway, though he couldn't remember exactly what. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, the psychiatrist assigned to Kemper's case, noted unusual patterns in his testimony. While his descriptions of daily life in Millbrook Valley were vivid and consistent, his memories of the town's final days were fragmented and filled with gaps. He spoke of strange lights in the sky, people disappearing without explanation, and a growing sense of dread that had consumed the community. When pressed for details, Kemper would become agitated and claim that they were watching, though he could never identify who they were. The breakthrough came when Agent Mitchell decided to investigate the location Kemper described. Using his detailed directions, she drove into the Nevada desert, following a series of unmarked dirt roads that led to what should have been empty wasteland. Instead, she found something that would haunt her for the rest of her life: the perfectly preserved foundations of an entire town, complete with concrete slabs where houses had stood, the remains of a main street, and a water tower foundation that matched Kemper's descriptions exactly, the site that Harold Kemper led authorities to defied explanation. Satellite imagery from the 1980s showed nothing but desert scrubland, yet the physical evidence on the ground told a different story. The concrete foundations were weathered but intact, suggesting they had been there for decades. Soil analysis revealed traces of human habitation, fragments of household items, pieces of clothing, and most mysteriously, personal belongings that seemed to have been abandoned in haste. FBI forensics teams spent weeks cataloguing the evidence. They found children's toys buried in the sand, family photographs scattered across what had once been residential areas, and the twisted remains of vehicles that appeared to have been subjected to intense heat. The pattern of destruction was unlike anything the investigators had seen before. Rather than the random devastation typical of natural disasters or conventional attacks, the evidence suggested a methodical evacuation followed by systematic destruction. Agent Mitchell's team discovered that the town's layout matched Harold Kemper's descriptions with unsettling accuracy. The main street ran north to south, just as he had said. The school was located on the eastern edge of town, and the church foundations were found exactly where Kemper claimed they would be. Most significantly, they found the remains of the town hall, where Kemper said he had served as mayor for over 15 years. The forensics team made another disturbing discovery in what appeared to be the town's residential district. Beneath several of the house foundations, they found evidence of underground tunnels and chambers that Kemper had never mentioned. These subterranean spaces contained sophisticated electronic equipment, much of it damaged beyond recognition. The technology appeared to be far more advanced than anything commercially available in the 1980s, leading investigators to suspect government involvement. Dr. Patricia Vance, a specialist in electromagnetic phenomena, was brought in to analyze strange readings detected throughout the site. Her equipment registered unusual magnetic fields and electromagnetic signatures that seemed to emanate from deep underground. When she attempted to map these anomalies, the pattern that emerged suggested a vast network of underground facilities extending far beyond the visible town boundaries. Agent Mitchell's investigation took a dramatic turn when she attempted to access government records related to the Nevada desert region where Millbrook Valley had supposedly existed. Her security clearance, which had previously granted her access to sensitive FBI files, was suddenly insufficient for documents related to that specific area. When she pressed her superiors for answers, she was told that the region fell under the jurisdiction of a classified military project, and that her investigation was being transferred to a joint task force. The joint task force was led by Colonel James Harrison, a career military officer with extensive experience in classified operations. Harrison's first action was to restrict access to the Millbrook Valley site and classify all evidence collected by the FBI team. When Agent Mitchell protested, she was informed that the investigation now fell under national security protocols and that her continued involvement would require additional security clearances that could take months to process. Despite the official roadblocks, Agent Mitchell continued her investigation through unofficial channels. She discovered that the Nevada desert region had been the site of numerous classified experiments dating back to the 1950s. Project Blue Sky, a joint military-civilian research initiative, had reportedly conducted atmospheric and psychological research in remote desert locations. While most records of Blue Sky remained classified, leaked documents suggested that the project had involved experiments in mass population control and advanced surveillance technologies. Harold Kemper's medical records revealed additional disturbing details. Blood tests showed traces of unknown chemical compounds that didn't match any known medications or environmental toxins. Brain scans revealed unusual activity in regions associated with memory formation and recall, suggesting that his fragmented memories might be the result of deliberate manipulation rather than trauma or mental illness. Agent Mitchell's breakthrough came when she located Dr. Robert Chen, a former researcher who had worked on classified projects in the Nevada desert during the 1970s and 1980s. Dr. Chen, now retired and living under an assumed name, agreed to meet with her only after she convinced him that lives might be at stake. What he told her would fundamentally change her understanding of the Millbrook Valley case and expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of government. Dr. Robert Chen's testimony provided the first concrete link between Millbrook Valley and the classified research programs that had operated in the Nevada desert for decades. According to Chen, Millbrook Valley had been established in 1962 as part of a joint CIA military project designed to test advanced surveillance and population control technologies on an isolated community. The town's residents, Chen claimed, had been unwitting subjects in experiments that pushed the boundaries of psychological manipulation and social engineering. The project, codenamed Operation Mirror Lake, had recruited families from across the country under the pretense of participating in a pioneering community development program. Participants were offered free housing, guaranteed employment, and excellent schools for their children in exchange for agreeing to live in the experimental community for a minimum of 10 years. What they weren't told was that every aspect of their lives would be monitored, recorded, and manipulated as part of an ongoing research program. Chen described sophisticated surveillance systems that had been built into every building in Millbrook Valley. Hidden cameras and microphones recorded conversations and activities throughout the town, while advanced computer systems analyzed the data to identify patterns in human behavior. The research team was particularly interested in how communities responded to stress, how information spread through social networks, and how individual behavior could be modified through environmental manipulation. The experiments had escalated over the years, according to Chen's testimony. What began as passive observation evolved into active intervention. Researchers began introducing controlled stressors into the community, staged accidents, mysterious illnesses, and unexplained phenomena designed to test how the population would respond. The goal was to develop techniques for managing large populations during times of crisis, but the methods used were increasingly unethical and potentially illegal. Chen's most disturbing revelation concerned the final phase of the Millbrook Valley experiment. In early 1987, he claimed, the research team had begun testing advanced mind control technologies that could selectively erase or modify memories. The technology, based on electromagnetic field manipulation and targeted pharmaceutical interventions, was designed to allow authorities to remove specific memories from entire populations. The residents of Millbrook Valley, Chen said, had become test subjects for the ultimate tool of social control. According to Dr. Chen's testimony, the events that led to Millbrook Valley's disappearance began in March 1987, when the research team received authorization to conduct what they called the final protocol. This experiment was designed to test whether an entire community's memories could be selectively altered or erased, effectively allowing the government to rewrite history on a local scale. The residents of Millbrook Valley, who had unknowingly participated in psychological experiments for over 2 decades, were about to become subjects in the most ambitious mind control experiment ever attempted. The final protocol involved the installation of powerful electromagnetic field generators throughout the town, disguised as upgrades to the electrical grid. These devices, Chen explained, could generate specific frequencies that affected brain function, particularly in areas related to memory formation and retention. Combined with aerosol dispersal of experimental pharmaceuticals through the town's water supply and air conditioning systems, the technology could theoretically erase specific memories while leaving other cognitive functions intact. The experiment began on April 15, 1987, with what residents were told was a routine emergency preparedness drill. The entire population was instructed to remain indoors while atmospheric testing was conducted in the surrounding area. Over the course of 3 days, the electromagnetic field generators operated continuously while pharmaceutical agents were dispersed throughout the town. Residents reported headaches, disorientation, and vivid dreams, but were told these were normal side effects of the atmospheric conditions being tested. Chen described monitoring the experiment from a command center located several miles from Millbrook Valley. The research team tracked the neurological effects of their intervention through implanted monitoring devices that many residents had received during routine medical procedures over the years. The data showed that the memory erasure process was working, but not as precisely as intended. Instead of selectively removing memories of the experiments, the technology was causing widespread amnesia and psychological trauma. By April 18th, it became clear that the final protocol had gone catastrophically wrong. Many residents were experiencing complete memory loss, while others were suffering from severe psychological breaks. Some began to remember fragments of the experiments they had endured over the years, leading to panic and attempts to flee the town. The research team, faced with a population that was becoming increasingly unstable and potentially dangerous to the secrecy of the operation, made the decision to implement the contingency plan, complete evacuation and erasure of all evidence. The evacuation of Millbrook Valley began in the early hours of April 19, 1987, under the cover of what residents were told was an emergency chemical spill requiring immediate relocation. Military personnel, disguised as hazmat teams and emergency responders, went door to door, instructing families to gather only essential belongings and report to the town square for transportation to temporary shelters. The residents, many of whom were still suffering from the effects of the memory manipulation experiments, complied without significant resistance. Dr. Chen's account of the evacuation revealed the cold efficiency with which the operation was conducted. Families were separated during the transportation process, with adults and children loaded onto different vehicles under the pretense of medical screening requirements. The residents were told they would be reunited at the relocation centers, but Chen knew this was a lie. The plan was to process each individual separately, using advanced memory modification techniques to ensure they had no recollection of Millbrook Valley or the experiments they had endured. The relocation centers were actually classified medical facilities located across several states. Each resident underwent what was described as decontamination and medical evaluation, but was actually an intensive program of memory modification and psychological conditioning. Using a combination of pharmaceutical interventions, electromagnetic therapy, and sophisticated psychological manipulation, the research team systematically erased all memories of Millbrook Valley from the minds of its former residents. Harold Kemper's survival was an unintended consequence of the evacuation process. As the town's mayor, he had been scheduled for the most intensive memory modification procedures, but a clerical error resulted in his being transported to the wrong facility. By the time the mistake was discovered, Kemper had escaped from the transport vehicle during a routine stop. His partial memory loss was the result of incomplete exposure to the memory modification technology, which explained why he retained vivid memories of daily life in Millbrook Valley, while having fragmented recollections of the town's final days. The physical destruction of Millbrook Valley began immediately after the last residents were evacuated. Military demolition teams systematically destroyed every building, using controlled explosives and specialized equipment to reduce the structures to rubble. The debris was then removed, and the area was treated with chemicals designed to accelerate the natural weathering process. Within weeks, satellite imagery showed nothing but empty desert where a thriving community had once existed. The systematic erasure of Millbrook Valley from official records was as comprehensive as the physical destruction of the town itself. Dr. Chen described a massive bureaucratic operation that involved multiple government agencies working in coordination to eliminate every trace of the community's existence. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, property deeds, and tax records were removed from state and federal databases. School transcripts, medical records, and employment histories were deleted or altered to remove any reference to Millbrook Valley. The cover-up extended beyond government records to include private sector documentation. Banks were instructed to purge records of accounts held by Millbrook Valley residents, while utility companies deleted service records for the area. Even seemingly innocuous references, such as mentions in local newspapers or high school yearbooks, were systematically removed or altered. The operation required the cooperation of hundreds of individuals across dozens of organizations, all bound by national security classifications that carried severe penalties for disclosure. Agent Mitchell's investigation revealed that the cover-up had been planned from the beginning of the Millbrook Valley project. Contingency protocols existed for the complete erasure of the community should the experiments be discovered, or should they produce results that threatened national security. The final protocol that had gone so disastrously wrong was actually just one of several possible endpoints for the project, all of which involved the elimination of evidence and witnesses. The fate of Millbrook Valley's residents remained one of the most disturbing aspects of the cover-up. According to Chen's testimony, most of the evacuated residents had been successfully processed through the memory modification program and relocated to new communities across the country. They were given new identities, fabricated personal histories, and psychological conditioning that made them believe they had always lived in their new locations. The process was so thorough that even close family members who had been separated during the evacuation would not recognize each other if they met by chance. However, Chen admitted that not all of the residents had survived the memory modification process. The technology was experimental and dangerous, with a significant failure rate that resulted in permanent psychological damage or death. He estimated that approximately 200 of Millbrook Valley's 3,000 residents had died during the evacuation and processing, their deaths covered up as accidents or natural causes occurring in their supposed home communities. Despite the official termination of her investigation, Agent Mitchell continued to pursue the Millbrook Valley case through unofficial channels. Her persistence led to the discovery of additional witnesses and evidence that supported Dr. Chen's testimony. She located former military personnel who had participated in the evacuation, medical professionals who had worked at the relocation centers, and even a few residents who had escaped the memory modification process and retained partial memories of their experiences. One of the most significant witnesses was Dr. Amanda Torres, a psychiatrist who had worked at one of the relocation centers. Dr. Torres had been told she was treating victims of a chemical accident, but she gradually realized that her patients' symptoms were inconsistent with chemical exposure. Many displayed signs of deliberate psychological trauma and memory manipulation. When she attempted to report her concerns to her superiors, she was transferred to a different facility and warned that discussing her observations would violate national security protocols. Agent Mitchell also discovered evidence that the Millbrook Valley project was not unique. Dr. Chen's testimony suggested that similar experiments had been conducted in other isolated communities across the United States, all under the umbrella of various classified research programs. The technology and techniques developed in Millbrook Valley had apparently been refined and applied to other populations, creating a network of secret experiments that spanned decades and involved thousands of unwitting subjects. The investigation revealed that Harold Kemper was not the only survivor with intact memories. Agent Mitchell located 3 other individuals who had escaped the evacuation or had been incompletely processed by the memory modification program. Each of them told similar stories of a thriving community that had gradually become the site of increasingly disturbing experiments. Their testimonies provided corroborating evidence for Chen's account and helped fill in details about daily life in Millbrook Valley during its final years. The most disturbing discovery was evidence that the memory modification technology developed in Millbrook Valley was still being used. Agent Mitchell found indications that similar techniques were being employed in other contexts, possibly including the treatment of military personnel with PTSD, the interrogation of suspected terrorists, and even the management of civilian populations during natural disasters or civil unrest. The implications were staggering. The government possessed the ability to selectively erase memories and rewrite personal histories on a massive scale. Agent Mitchell's investigation culminated in the discovery of classified documents that confirmed the existence of a broader conspiracy involving multiple government agencies and private contractors. The documents, obtained through a whistleblower within the Department of Defense, revealed that the Millbrook Valley Project was part of a larger program called Operation Mindbridge, which had been conducting psychological and neurological experiments on American citizens for over 40 years. Operation Mindbridge had its origins in the Cold War-era research into mind control and psychological warfare. What began as defensive research designed to protect American personnel from enemy brainwashing techniques had evolved into an offensive program aimed at developing tools for population control and social engineering. Millbrook Valley represented the culmination of decades of research, a real-world laboratory where advanced mind control technologies could be tested on an entire community. The documents revealed that Operation Mindbridge had received funding and support from the highest levels of government, including authorization from multiple presidents and congressional oversight committees. The program operated under such strict classification that even most government officials were unaware of its existence. Those who did know were bound by national security oaths that carried the threat of life imprisonment, or worse, for disclosure. Agent Mitchell's investigation also uncovered evidence of international connections. The memory modification technology developed in Millbrook Valley had apparently been shared with allied governments as part of intelligence cooperation agreements. Similar experiments had been conducted in Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia, creating a network of secret research programs that spanned the globe. The implications for human rights and democratic governance were profound. The exposure of Operation Mindbridge created a crisis within the intelligence community. Agent Mitchell's investigation had uncovered evidence of crimes against humanity committed by the American government against its own citizens. The memory modification experiments violated numerous laws and constitutional protections, while the cover-up involved obstruction of justice on a massive scale. The question became not whether crimes had been committed, but how to address them without destroying public trust in democratic institutions. The resolution of the Millbrook Valley case demonstrated the lengths to which powerful institutions will go to protect their secrets. As Agent Mitchell prepared to present her findings to congressional investigators, she found herself the target of a sophisticated disinformation campaign designed to discredit her investigation and silence the witnesses she had uncovered. Dr. Chen was found dead in his home, apparently the victim of a heart attack, though no autopsy was performed. Dr. Torres suffered a nervous breakdown and was committed to a psychiatric facility where she was heavily medicated and unable to communicate coherently. Harold Kemper, the original witness whose testimony had started the investigation, disappeared from the Nevada State Hospital where he was being treated. Official records indicated that he had been transferred to a federal facility for specialized care, but Agent Mitchell's attempts to locate him were unsuccessful. The other survivors she had identified also vanished, either dying under suspicious circumstances or disappearing without a trace. Agent Mitchell herself faced increasing pressure to abandon her investigation. She was subjected to internal affairs investigations, her security clearance was revoked, and she was eventually forced to resign from the FBI under threat of criminal prosecution for unauthorized disclosure of classified information. The official position became that her investigation had been based on fabricated evidence and unreliable witnesses, and that no town called Millbrook Valley had ever existed. The physical evidence from the Nevada desert site was also systematically eliminated. The concrete foundations and other traces of the town were removed during what was described as an environmental cleanup operation. The area was then designated as a restricted military zone, making future investigation impossible. Satellite imagery was retroactively altered to remove any evidence that structures had ever existed at the location. The final phase of the cover-up involved the manipulation of digital records and historical documentation. Advanced computer algorithms were used to identify and eliminate any remaining references to Millbrook Valley or Operation Mindbridge from government databases, academic research, and even private communications. The technology that had been developed to erase memories was adapted to erase history itself, creating a digital amnesia that made it virtually impossible to prove that the events had ever occurred. Today, more than 3 decades after the disappearance of Millbrook Valley, the truth remains buried beneath layers of classification and disinformation. The survivors are gone, the witnesses have been silenced, and the physical evidence has been destroyed. The memory modification technology that was perfected in the Nevada desert continues to be developed and deployed, hidden within legitimate medical research and national security programs. The town that the FBI erased from the map serves as a reminder of the price of unchecked government power and the fragility of truth in an age of technological manipulation. The story of Millbrook Valley raises profound questions about the nature of memory, identity, and reality itself. If our memories can be selectively erased or modified, what does it mean to be human? If entire communities can be made to disappear without a trace, what protection do any of us have against the abuse of power? The answers to these questions remain classified, buried in files that may never see the light of day, protected by the same system that erased a town and its people from existence. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most disturbing classified cases in FBI history, please give this video a like and subscribe to Unsolved Files for more investigations into the mysteries that powerful institutions don't want you to know about. Your support helps us continue uncovering the truth behind the cases that have been buried, classified, and forgotten. What other government secrets do you think are still hidden from the public? Let us know in the comments below. And remember to hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest investigations into the unknown.